or we'll let people know. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, who is the fabulous, wonderful Mary Sabatkoski. So she's going to be talking today about powering up content strategy with experience maps. So if you don't know Mary, she is a content strategist that works at Canva. She's also previously worked at Open Universities, and she has a really awesome perspective on content strategy that I love, because it connects the dots between kind of UX thinking, data thinking, content and marketing thinking, but in a way that allows organizations to kind of see it at a big picture level. We're really happy to have her with us today, especially because we really often reference this work to clients and other people and how great it is. So this is a really good opportunity to hear from Mary herself about how she helps organizations kind of build that big picture view of things using experience maps. So I'm going to hand over to Mary and say welcome. Stop my share.
Thanks, Mickey.
No.
Okay, let's attempt to share. All right. Is that working? You can see first slide. Cool. All right. Hi. Thanks for everyone for coming, and hope you enjoy today's session on experience maps. I thought let's kick off. Just pop in the chat if anyone's ever used an experience map, been exposed to one, created one, are aware of one. Yeah, just want to gauge the level of like experience with experience maps. I just pop them in when you can. Yes. Okay. One. Yes. Lovely. Yes, cool, awesome, great. So hopefully some of these concepts will already resonate with a lot of you. But have you ever thought about putting experience maps and content strategy together? If you haven't, then I think you'll find some really cool tips today. So yeah, I'm Mary, I'm content strategist over at Canva, and I'm doing a lot of cool things with growth marketing teams lately, and it's a really interesting space to be in, especially at the moment. However, I do have a huge passion for customer experience. I think that more content strategists really need to work more in that space, and really help shape the CX strategy of an organization, and also like the CX culture in our organizations too. So I've worked in previous roles in product management and CX strategy, and innovation as well. And each of them have these really cool little tools and techniques and methodologies. And I think that if we can bring them all together, like we can really power up the way that we do content and also the influence that we can have. And that's kind of where some of this came from as well. So yeah, let's get started. So today's agenda, we're going to deep dive into all this fun stuff. So we're going to go into CX. We're going to talk about CX, EX, and all of these will make sense in just a second. Sorry for the acronym soup. But I'm also going to go into a lot of examples, and a lot of inspiration at the end as well. So hopefully you can take some of this away and go, oh, maybe I can try and apply it to this particular thing. Yeah, and hopefully you'll be inspired to go and build your own. So imagine for a moment that all your customers' experiences ended like this. So even though this is probably a little bit unrealistic, many organizations are really taking serious consideration into the customer experience, or CX. And it's because we live in a digitally enabled world. And this is a key brand differentiator that we're going to use to attract and maintain our customers. But great customer experiences start from within. And those organizations that are exceeding are doing so because of an alignment in their strategy, vision, customer understanding, tools, and processes. And it's all underpinned by a great employee experience as well. And it's kind of the same elements for a great content strategy. So what's holding yours back? Is it siloed approaches to, well, everything? Outdated journeys, messy or missing governance, or internal jargon? Or is it even just the way that you measure things? So in a previous role, I had actually spent months trying to work out why some people in the organization called our end users customers, some called them consumers, and others called them students. But I'll tell you how I solved for that a little bit later on. And that was pretty much my reaction. But alignment is hard, and sometimes CX is just so far in the rear window for our teams because they're just trying to get shit done. And when there's no formal structures or centralized teams, there's time restraints, there's delivery pressures. And for teams to have to stop and think about that, it's just a luxury that they don't have. And I've been there. I've been designing CX strategies, doing digital transformations, and I know it's a long process to get to that stage of alignment. It takes investment and effort in all of these elements. Vision, strategy, design, operations, insights all play a critical role here. But why such a focus on CX? You might be thinking, I'm just creating content for the help center. Because CX is the sum of all interactions across touchpoints over time. And it's how your customers view your brand and evaluate the promise that you make to them. So from a TV ad to the way that your website's designed, you are signaling an expectation and a commitment to your user. And when the expectation versus reality gap is widening, it's never been more important to put that consideration into CX and investment. Because when it comes to critical decision-making moments for your customer, your brand needs to stand out and deliver. Because your brand is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. And the experience influences this perception. So how does content fit in here? Well, it lives at that first level of experience, the interaction level. And that is part of a wider journey. And then that journey ladders up to the relationship that your users have with your brand. So the end-to-end experience is slowly built over time and across each touch point. And where are those touch points? Well, they're at the interaction level where your content lives. In fact, 57% of customers would leave a brand after only 1 or 2 negative interactions. And about 65 of them would switch when their experience did not match what was promised by your brand's image. So we need the tools that help us deliver a successful customer experience, but not just us in this Zoom, but everyone in our organization. And it all starts by understanding the experience at the relationship level, because this is where everything ladders up to. And relationships are built on trust, and trust is earned through interactions within journeys. When we think of journeys, though, we want to be thinking end to end. So for Amazon, a digital first company, their customer experience starts when you first hear about Amazon. And it ends when you open your package. So the experience is not just digital or transactional, it's also physical, human, and emotional. And the human side is when the storytelling becomes really important. So you may have seen this post floating around. It went viral after a fireside chat with Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, when he spoke about leading through uncertainty at last year's Config conference. Over COVID, their team created a blueprint of the Airbnb end-to-end experience. They mapped every screen, policy, and operational touchpoint for both sides of their marketplace, creating a visual story that Brian calls wrapping your hands around the customer. But this isn't the first time that they've done something like this. In 2012, Project Snow White was their first visual end-to-end experience map. And inspired by Disney's storyboarding process, the head of design said that this project was a turning point in the company when they discovered that the moments that mattered for their customer were actually offline. It was only then they realized that their website was not their product. The trip was the product. The customer's physical experience, that's what they were selling. And it was then that they pivoted from a tech company to a lifestyle company. And their map became a shared framework that the entire company could contribute to. And it provided the right constraints to foster innovation that rolled into their brand promise. So they empowered their employees with a vision of the future, a framework to work from, understanding of their customer, and a way for teams to see their role in it all. So why is this experience map so important? And why the focus on getting employees to even contribute to this? Because research shows the employee experience, or EX, is now a key driver of successful customer experience. And just as CX is the sum of all customer interactions, EX is the equivalent for an employee. In fact, a PwC study showed that brands that invest in both CX and EX and deliver superior experiences for both, they can charge as much as 16% extra for their products and services. And over 70% of brands who are doing this are seeing year-on-year growth, profitability, and employee retention. So connecting employees with your customer, providing the right tools and processes, and visibility of key metrics, they all contribute to uplifts in innovation, revenue, and metrics. When employees understand how their experience is aligned to the customer experience, they intuitively start to contribute to it. And just like Airbnb's shared framework, a tool that can help facilitate this understanding is an experience map. Okay, so what's an experience map? Why is it so good? It's a high-level visual overview of the end-to-end customer experience. It's a storytelling and alignment tool like the one that you see here. And I know what you're thinking, this kind of looks like a journey map, right? Well, not exactly, and I'll tell you why. So a customer journey map is a visualization of the process that a person goes through in order to accomplish a goal. It usually goes really deep into the problem space, and its strength is in finding opportunities for improvement and normally focusing on one customer segment at a time. And they're built from insights that are relevant at the time of the map's creation, so it can date quickly and be really hard to operationalize. And often teams will take these opportunities, put them in the backlog, work through them, and not really go back and update the map. But the other problem with journey maps is they imply that the user journey is linear, customers happily moving from one stage to the next. But in reality, journeys actually look like this. So a study conducted by Google in 2019 called The Messy Middle shows that users get stuck in these loops of exploration and evaluation until they're nudged out of these cycles through design heuristics and cognitive biases, such as social proof. And this repeats many times over during the customer lifecycle for every decision, from an initial purchase to renewing a subscription to re-enrolling for a course. So they're not linear, but they're cyclical loops. And this unpredictability is why journey maps is not a reliable, scalable, or operational tool to align on the customer experience. Instead, let's dig in on those experience maps. So, like these, they're flexible and adaptable, and they can be used for different teams' needs. It may look linear, but don't let that fool you. Journeys, plans, and stories are constructed by its elements, but not necessarily in a linear or sequential way. And they unify around a shared vision. So consistency, alignment, and an outside-in view of your customer. So get employees closer to your customer. That's the goal. And an experience map can be a powerful tool in doing this. So let's look at the elements that go into an experience map and how you can get started to create one of your own. So I've been referring to this tool as an experience map, but it can go by any name. So Airbnb's was a blueprint, and in the examples I have coming, they all have different names as well. So just use whatever works for you or your organization. And my biggest tip on getting started is just do it. Like, don't wait for a big research project or even permission to do it. Just grab a wall or a virtual whiteboard and start collating anything you can find. Any existing insights, I'm sure there's some throughout your organization. And think of all your customer groups, B2B, B2C, and don't forget employees as well. And look for ways to involve various teams, skill sets, and departments. Those that contribute to it, they can see where they fit into it and are likely to become advocates early. So that example map from earlier, that started with a few stickies in a wall in a meeting room. So we went through and scoured like Confluence pages and research decks, call center scripts, anything we could find and get our hands on. We put it on a wall and purposely made it visible. For this map, we ran a series of roadshows where we educated small groups of staff on what we were doing and asked them to contribute to the map by leaving insights or assumptions. So that way everybody felt like they had a say. And just like Airbnb's, this was going to be our shared framework that everybody could contribute to. Deciding on which lanes to add to your map, though, that really depends on what needs alignment, what's important to your organization, and what's going to resonate with everybody. So these 4 lanes could be a good starting point. And again, they could be called anything that you want. So let's make this map. So this is based off a real world map for that 2-sided online marketplace that I showed you earlier on. So let's build out some of these lanes. So we'll start with the stages. So those are similar to what you'd find in a journey map. However, these are really high level to capture all customer interactions across multiple segments. So for example, let's take a student audience. So we're not going to go and break them up into undergrad, postgrad, adult learner, or career changer. We're going to leave journey maps to do that level of detail. But regardless of the customer's intent, the same activities and behaviors are present across each of those groups. And the stages, they're not linear, even though they're presented this way. Users can actually skip, repeat stages, just like that cyclical journey map that we saw, the cyclical journey little model that we saw earlier. And we can add some descriptors here as well, such as the activities that could be happening in that stage. And from these activities alone, you can start to get a sense of the surface areas, products, services, or anything that a user may encounter in this stage. The stages are grouped into chapters, and these can be audience specific, such as the study chapter here for a student audience. If this was a university partner map, for example, their chapter could be something like Grow, and an employee could be something like Thrive. And here you can also capture goals, top tasks, and align on metrics. And then phases group chapters. So these are the highest level groupings, and I try to keep these consistent across all the different maps. So for example, students, partners, and employees would all go through a first-time experience. It just looks different from the chapters down of what that looks like for each customer group. And phases are also where we define moments that matter, conversion points, and entry and exit points from one phase to the next. Oh, and remember those 3 ways that people use to describe a customer? Customer, consumer, student. Well, this is where I solve for that confusion. So students now have their own term based on where they are in the journey. Dreamer, explorer, applicant, starter. Now we're all talking the same language, because when we refer to that type of customer, we know where they are in the phases. And lastly, underpinning everything on your map is your mission and your brand promise. This is the vision and North Star for your customer experience, and it should be linked to your organization's purpose and the thing that your CX is measured against. So once you've got your foundation map, you can add lanes to it as it matures and adoption increases. And here are some examples of other lanes that may be added. And don't forget visuals. It is a visual map after all. And Airbnb's map was successful because it told the story through its illustrations. But what if you don't have any design talent? Well, I do have a product for that. And so whether you're using Canva's Magic Studio or Midjourney, any generative AI tool is your secret weapon. It can help you build characters, visuals, and storyboards to bring your map to life. And if you're not too sure how, a designer friend's actually created a step-by-step guide on how to do that. So you can definitely check that out. Right, that's the theory out of the way. Now let's get into some real maps and some real world use. So these are the 3 organizations that I was lucky enough to be involved in developing their experience maps. So I went digging through my archives and I found some real beauties. Hopefully you will get some great inspiration. So first up, this was my first exposure to an experience map, and it was back in 2016. So this is for RMIT, which is a Melbourne-based university. And at that time, they had about 100,000 students annually and about 4,000 staff. So RMIT Stage Map was developed as part of a CX toolkit when the university ventured into a customer-first culture. So the toolkit included an insights pack, personas, a stage map, and details of every stage. And there was a few versions of this map floating around, but this was the one that I liked the most because it mapped really nicely the student needs with the business needs and had them all showing on the one map. But what this map did really well was it showed the high-level end-to-end student experience that we had never seen before. And by omitting the level of detail that you would normally find in a journey map, it made this a scalable and flexible tool for adoption, no matter what part of the university you're in. And it was underpinned by a newly formed CX vision, and there's a really early version of it on the screen there. But customer centricity was really at the heart of how we were going to shift the digital strategy to stay true to RMIT's promise, which was get students ready for life and work. And this way of thinking was a turning point for the university and how it viewed the student experience. This toolkit was a catalyst for many student initiatives to improve the student experience and business outcomes. Soon enough, the personas and stage maps, they were on every wall across campus, and any student project had them included, from marketing to communications to IT. We had a language and a map to understand the student experience that we were all building towards. And the power of that was in the storytelling that the map enabled. The stages were designed in a way that anybody in the university could pick it up and say, we're designing an experience for this type of student at this part of the journey. What do we need to know to make sure that we're doing it right and we're meeting the needs and behaviors of our students? And journeys, there were so many of them for all different types of students. The research candidate journey, the adult learner, the vocational student experience, and some really specific cohorts, such as the international student onboarding journey, low socioeconomic student journey, and one of the prettiest maps, the Indigenous student journey, all providing valuable insights and opportunities to improve the experience and outcome for our students, all built off the experience map. But it wasn't just journey maps. The stage map helps solve business problems and align other teams in the student journey. So things like lost opportunities of non-enrollers or discrepancies in processes or finding ways to optimize our tech capability. The video here was from 2017 where I presented about the vision of our IT platforms and how they're going to enable the new student experience. All mapped against the journey. And this was just the tip of the iceberg for CX at RMIT. At that time, they had also just opened the Experience Design Center, a physical place for students to come together and co-design. And you can see the stage maps adorning the back walls in one of the photographs in the background. And the student map also paved way for similar ones for employees and industry experience as well. And in 2017, the team had also won a coveted Customer Experience Award for this work. And it opened opportunities for innovation that we didn't have before. So here is where I led a team to build a prototype for an AI-enabled mobile app to help students through their prepare and attend stages, or otherwise known as onboarding. And that's what AI apps look like in 2018, by the way. They've evolved quite a lot since then. But it's been 6 years since this CX capability was launched. And at the time, it was really forward-thinking, and I'm pretty sure they've evolved it even more today. So next up, we have Open Universities Australia, or OUA. And despite its name, it's not a university. It's an education marketplace that helps students find a course and university partners come to promote their online offerings. Over 500,000 students have enrolled through OUA in its 30-year history. And this map was called the Experience Framework, and it's one close to my heart because it was one that I had initiated. And I took inspiration from RMIT Stage Map, similar customers, right? But we certainly put our own spin on it. This is the student map, and a partner in EX version was also in the works. No one had ever used one before. I didn't see the value in it until later. And I'm not gonna lie, it actually took a lot of convincing to get people to even explain why we needed it and how we could use it. But eventually we had everybody contributing to it. Senior leaders in marketing and design embraced it and had us have the additional lanes for brand pillars and design principles. So it took about 8 months to fully complete, and it went through a number of iterations. But because it's a framework, it's not going to date easily unless there's a huge change in business strategy. And why did we use it? I have a bunch of examples coming up on how. The lanes that we chose that were really important to OUA, CX, design, and brand promise, they were key purpose drivers for this nonprofit. And just like the Airbnb one, through this process, what we did was we discovered that the moments that matter for our students, they weren't actually the course. They were what the course enabled. So it was getting a new job or changing your career or upskilling for a promotion. And that really changed the way that we focused the student experience. Access, connection, empowerment, that was our promise to our customer on helping students get from here to there and guiding them through that liminal space. So journey maps was an obvious use case, and this is one that represented the prospective undergrad experience. But we also used it for a global taxonomy across all of our digital properties, an IT map of domains and platforms that were anchored to each of the phases, product roadmap alignment, and it was really great to be able to map features and products across a time period to see if there were any areas of the experience that were being underserved or overserved. We also created performance dashboard aligned to the phases so that we can track and align on the metrics that we were measuring at a company level, department level, and team level. It was also extensively used to plan and execute our content strategy. So some examples of this are mapping our pillars, our principles, our key metrics, and channels under each of those phases. And then adding top tasks, decision drivers, and value propositions for all the messaging frameworks. We also redesigned the email journey for the first-time student experience. And this was the first time they had ever used an approach like this. And you can start to see all the opportunities that were uncovered by all the stickies in that screenshot. There was a crazy amount of stickies on that screenshot, by the way. So there were plenty of opportunities that we uncovered when we laid it out in this way. And we were much better prepared to serve the students' needs by using this approach. We also used it to design a personalization framework that we could then align to our marketing funnel, and also identifying customer points in the experience that we were going to use as signals in our personalization. And we also built a block strategy around it. So it wasn't all fancy stuff, just something really simple like planning. And also had a repository of tagged insights that we would use from all the different types of research projects. And it also appeared in our SEO strategy for your SEO folk out there. So this was part of our intent match framework that created our keyword allocation plan, which we actually performed really well. So we're really happy with it. And finally, at the bottom, have you ever seen a more fun racy? So this is content ownership, governance, and it's all aligned to the experience phases, including the channel, the content type, the customer, and which team is responsible. And lastly, the HR team running a workshop because they wanted to create an employee version of this. And so they wanted to use the same phases, but they're going to have custom chapters for the employees. And of course, on the bottom screen there, that's the start of the partner version as well. So everybody had their own version of the experience map. So lots and lots of ideas and inspiration from the OUA map of how we had applied it across different teams and purposes. So let's leave this one and we'll go to the last organization. Okay, so this one is pretty hot off the press, actually. It's only about 6 months old. So many of you may know of Canva. So we create digital products that empower the world to design. And we have about 170 million monthly active users globally. So this map has a bit of a backstory. So Canva's product design specialty already had a basic vert map showing around 6 stages and some descriptors under each one. And this was really useful in the product design specialty, but it didn't really scale or get used as much outside of those teams. And primarily that's because it was focused on all the activities that were happening inside the Canva product, such as designing and sharing. So last year, a handful of us got together to build on the original verb map and turn it into an end-to-end experience map. So we wanted to encompass all the customers, all the teams, and the holistic Canva brand experience. We then presented it to staff as a shared language map, and I was really, really excited to be part of the next evolution of this map. So are you ready for it? So it's pretty epic. Ta-da! Okay, it's playing. So it's still a work in progress, but it's already evolved from its original version. So if you had seen this talk last year, it would already start to look different. And that's because we got feedback from our employees, because remember, these tools are for the employees. And so we started to really input a lot of their feedback and contributions. And it's likely to evolve again. So as we get more of that feedback, but at one stage it's going to get stable, it's going to stabilize, and then something that we'll start to use a lot more throughout the organization. So millions of users, dozens of teams, a suite of products and services, all beautifully captured in one map. So lanes such as guiding principles, how might we, and jobs to be done, they show our relentless pursuit of designing an experience that is empowering and delightful while staying true to our mission and promise to empower the world to design. So this map is still quite new, so I don't have too many examples of its use yet. However, here are a couple of recent examples of discovery projects that I had worked on where I've included the experience map. So the first one was mapping top tasks of our student customer in the Canva education product and identifying which ones will be solved through the website experience. So normally like top and middle stages of the funnel. And the one underneath, speaking of funnels, this is literally where I mapped some SEO intents through the funnel into our content needs for our B2B customers. So a couple of different applications there. And we've also created some guidance on how to use the map for different roles and specialties. So, oh, sorry, no, this is a story map. So this is an example of a story map of how we can start to use elements from the experience map and build a story or a customer story of how this person goes through the Canva brand experience. And a couple of other examples of use were being able to do storyboarding. We're also creating a bit of a taxonomy as well that I'm using with some of the terms from the map. And we also have a continued tradition of a thing called show and tells. So basically anyone in the organization can come and show something that they're working on. It doesn't have to be anything polished or finished, but they come in and they can just show through. So today's theme is discover. We can have different surface areas and representations from different areas that talk to that stage of the journey. Just really cool. So this is the one around the guidance of the map and how people can use it for different roles and specialties. So this is an example of a content designer. So you could use the verb map for consistency in the language, taxonomies, or copy messaging. Yeah, and so we're going to have a lot more examples of use of the Canva verb map across the organizations as use picks up. But yeah, stay tuned to see how it evolves even more. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up now. So I want to finish with a bit of content strategy because that's what we're all here for. So by now you've seen a number of ways that the experience map can be used to power up your content strategy. That can be across content design, content engineering, or even content management. So from research, personalization, and even governance. You really could use that to anchor and align your organization across your content strategy. And all of these examples are ways to make your content strategy more visible, impactful, and aligned to the customer experience while empowering employees with the right tools and processes. So journey maps, blog strategy, personalization journeys, data mapping, messaging frameworks, content pillars, metrics, campaigns, team member onboarding, you name it, we can use an experience map to help align people. And that's just the beginning. So go forth and power up your content strategy and your customer experience so that we can leave people with reactions like this. Thank you. That's all I have. So quick recap, CX is important, EX drives CX, experience maps true customers end-to-end journey. If you want to get started making one, just do it. And then a bunch of real world examples for you to get inspired by.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. I think any talk that ends with a still of Ken is going to be great. We had definitely questions coming through, so I might run through some of those questions, and I also have a few of my own as well. Feel free to pop your questions in the chat, guys, and we'll go through them.
Wow.
Swapnil mentioned that which I really like this actually, Swapnil, but they had at NBN they used to create sunny and rainy scenarios for doing process maps for network techs on site. Does that mean literally rainy and sunny, or does that mean like best practice, or like best case scenario, worst case scenario? Swapnil. Not sure, he might not be. There you go.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I can't put the camera on, but yeah, it's more the latter. It's more like we sort of predicting a best case path, and then what happens if something falls over. So we create like an alternate path for network techs to follow. So in case of any resolutions or fixings that they need to do. So two different process maps on one map, but it's just depicting two different scenarios.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things I always found really interesting about experience maps as opposed to journey maps, which is that they are, they're kind of like staging each event that someone can kind of go through. So you can actually have different experiences across the same set of events. Whereas with journeys, they're very, like each one is kind of, like you say, linear and fixed, which is not really how things work. Hey, Swapnil, while we've got you, do you want to ask your question about the time and cost efforts?
Yeah. So hi, Mary. Question. You mentioned when you were creating the experience map across different scenarios. I'm just curious to know, how do we justify, how if we when we're creating the maps right from scratch and then updating it as the process matures, or secondly, or is it just a one-off activity? Is it just like one deliverable of an entire sort of content set of deliverables?
Generally, it'd be it's kind of both. So there may be a few iterations and updates as you're developing it and maturing it, but it's going to hit a ceiling at one point where you're just like, this should cover most of the use cases and scenarios across the teams that do want to use it. The idea is for it to constantly be updated, because like we saw with the OUA example, it was a framework, and the only time that it was really going to change too much was if there was a huge change in business strategy. So at one point, it's going to hit a point where you're just going to be like, all right, this is what we're going to stick with, unless there's a real immediate need that we need to change it. But by changing it too much and too often, it just will lose its value. So a little bit of it's kind of a one-off. But having said that, it's probably something you want to revisit like once a year, just to make sure that it's still aligning with where your business is going, what that strategy is, and what the team's needs are as well. Because remember, it's an internal development tool. So if it's not serving your internal teams, and it's not working, you might want to change it up. So yeah, a bit of both.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That kind of goes well into Kusum's question, which is how many folks on your team are doing IRL, in real life research with students to capture that data, and how long was that period? So like, was it a big one-off event where you kind of did it, or did you go through a whole bunch of, desk research and synthesis? What was that?
I think every one of them had a different technique.
Yeah,
like
okay.
Map had a different one. So with the RMIT one, for example, and I think I might have a few RMIT people in the room that actually helped contribute to that one. That one had quite a big team on it. I think that one took about 12 months, and it had a huge team that were working on that to get it to that stage.
Yeah.
With the OUA one, it was 3 of us. It was 3 of us that built it up from start to end. And then obviously more people started to get involved and contribute to it. But in terms of ownership and driving it forward, it was a tiny team. The Canva one, we already had kind of a basic one. So we had something to start off. I think that one we had about 6 or 7 of us really working on it. But having said that, we also had quite senior people who were involved in that, so that could help drive that forward, because it's such a large organization. We needed that level of kind of buy-in from leadership, yeah, to be able to get that through. So it really depends on the size of your organization, how hard it is to get things approved and sent through. But at one stage, you will need to get some sort of senior leadership buy-in into it, because that will be the way to have it dispersed throughout your organization. So even if that's like your CMO, or if that's a design lead or someone that has influence, if you don't have someone of influence in the team working on it, get somebody eventually to be able to push that through.
I'm interested, just like maybe as an extension on that, as to how you came to like decide on what the kind of the stages were and how you labeled them. Was that something that kind of came from your kind of like content strategy mindset, or was that something that came more out of the design kind of mindset? Like where did it come from research, or did it come from kind of like observing patterns across all the different things that you were looking at?
I think it's a little bit of everything. So it's a bit of design input, it's a bit of content input. But one of the things with like naming stages and things, like I think I had one of the tips was like use a verb. Make that really actionable and really clear of what's happening in that stage to your customer. But it's also, naming things is hard. And I have the peeps in here who know what we go through when we have to name things. But it's also trying to not name things that are related to any product or any service or any feature, and trying to really use labels that are going to be understood internally, but also flexible and scalable enough that it could change. And it's not tied to something. So if you tie it to something tangible, like a name of a feature, and then you remove that, then the map is going to get off whack. So it's really about blending things, about what's going to be scalable, what's going to be flexible, what's going to be useful and understood internally. But also looking at what's happening in that stage and finding the best verb to describe exactly what's going on in that stage across all the
Lorraine asked the question, in a less mature organization, who are the best people to own the experience map, and who would be the key people to input?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a really good example was the OUA one, where myself initiated it, and straight away I knew I wanted our design lead. So like the most senior designer that I could find in the organization to be involved in that. And we were actually really fortunate because we had just built a very, very small CX team who were just focusing on customer experience. And so I had them involved as well. So in terms of the 3 leads, we had content, CX, design covered. And yeah, I think that was a really good mixture of skill set. What we're responsible for in terms of the customer experience, and also being able to then get buy-in from senior leadership. So I think if you have someone in that kind of representation would be really good. And even if you have like someone in sales or someone from the help center, like the more diverse skill sets you can get, the better it is, because it'll be more informed, but also it'll be less work to try and sell it to those types of teams. Because when a designer goes to a sales team and goes, do this, that's never going to work. But if you bring them along the journey with you, then you're a lot more likely to have success in it.
I've got a follow-up question to that actually, which is, did you use workshops, or did you use, like, I'd love an example of like one of the ways that you engage those stakeholders, those kind of broader stakeholders on the work that you were doing. And you've mentioned workshopping, but like, did that happen very early as a kind of inception thing, or was it a validation? Like, I'd love an example of a workshop that you ran, for example.
Yeah, we like that one that we had on the wall pre-COVID when everyone was still in the office. But the one we had on the wall was a really good example, because we put this thing on the wall purposely in a very high traffic area, and people would just walk past and be like, what is that? What's going on? And as we started to tell people about it, they were like, Oh, but I don't think, I think something else is happening here. I don't think you've captured this correctly. From my understanding, you know, and I said, oh, cool. All right, put on a post-it and put in the assumptions column because we haven't validated it, right? Put it in the assumptions column, and you'll be surprised at how many times assumptions are actually like defunct, but doesn't matter. But that wasn't the point. We weren't building a journey map, but we were building these foundations where we wanted people to have their input. And then we're like, oh, we know a lot of people have interest in this, but how do we, rather than getting the entire organization together and doing a presentation, which no one's going to care about, let's get people in small groups. So we'll do the sales team, then we'll do the help center team, then we'll do the call center team. And then like we'll get small teams of people to come in, explain what we're doing, tell them how they can contribute, and then spend 20 minutes of them like literally giving them post-it notes and saying, I want you to contribute something onto this map. And yeah, I think we ran like maybe like 10 of those sessions, or like an hour each. Yeah, and I think that was a really good way to just get their buy-in and also have them feel like they've contributed to it too.
Yeah. There's lots and lots and lots of thank yous and insightfuls, and have to go enjoyable but informative. Someone said verb map legendary with heart eyes 3 times, so that's, you know, a good sign. Yeah, lots and lots of thank yous for your time today. I have one last question, and if anyone's we've probably got time for one more if anyone wants to pop it in, but I've got one as well, which is we're doing a lot of taxonomy work at the moment with various clients, and I'm really interested in how you've connected. You mentioned connecting the experience map to taxonomy. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because I think that's one of the ways, by the way, that content and design can kind of differ, which is that content is so operational, you know, it goes on and on and on, and it's not just a vision that kind of gets executed one time. It's this thing that has to be managed over time. Taxonomy is like a really good example of that. Yeah, having ways that we can connect that operational content side to these kind of grander visions of a user experience, I think is one of the powerful elements of an experience map. So yeah, can you tell us a bit about how you connected the dots?
Yeah, definitely. So you know, just really basically all the terms that are on the map are like the perfect candidates to be added to your taxonomy. So you might have like a controlled list in your taxonomy of like stages, verb stages, or experience stages, or something like that, or experience chapter. And I think, well, the way I've used it is you have like lists that also represent those as well. So anything that's coming from the verb map, you want to be able to put into a taxonomy, because then you could use that for things like tagging content. You could use it for if you're so we had a thing where we had a research repository, and we would tag up all the insights with all the terms from the map. So what stage it was in, what chapter it was in, which customer it was in. And again, anybody could go in there and then find what's happening in this stage, just because they can search by that tag. And you don't have to know anything about the project or the team or what. You can just say, show me everything in the share stage or whatever it's called. Yeah, and also things like tagging content, that'll also then power up things like personalization and any automation that you want to do in the future, because it could again, you know, this person's in this stage of the journey, show me all the stuff that's happening in this stage. And so you can really start to find all the like content pieces, and if you've got structured content, hopefully you do, you can start to find and aggregate the right content for that too. So really like any other controlled list, it's just making sure that you match it to what's happening there. And that's another thing that will also expand its reach, because people who are not in design or not in content can also use it to be able to find things that are designy things and content things that they probably wouldn't know any other way to search for. Regardless of what platform that's in. We're also doing we're doing a massive taxonomy piece at the moment at Canva, actually. And so one of the ways that I'm looking at using our taxonomy will be to connect all our content across platforms, because there's no way that we can get all of our content in the one platform, and you really want to be honest. But we want to be able to connect all of it in some way. And so I'll be using the taxonomy across the different platforms to be able to then find, you know, a particular piece of content, or for a particular user or a particular stage. And so, yeah, being able to go, I need to create, one of the things I've found is when when there isn't a tool like this, everyone needs to create a journey map at one stage or another. If it's a marketer, if it's a designer, if it's a content person,
Yep.
you need to create some sort of journey map at one stage to solve some sort of problem, right? Or even a user flow. Everyone has different labels for what they label those stages or those journey maps or those steps. And so every time you're looking at them, you're like, how do I align this to what I think is the journey stages and what I think? So being able to use the map instead of a journey stage, you can then start to have that consistency across it, and you don't have to be involved in those teams or what they're working on, but you kind of start to understand exactly what they're doing by having consistency.
And even just what you were saying before about being able to almost like audit what's being done against those different stages, so you can see where you've got too much and too little, you know, work or content kind of happening. It's going to be super valuable. Yeah.
And from a user's point of view, it's just one brand experience, right? But marketing are like, oh no, we use the funnel, and then UX is like, oh no, we use journey stages, and then like another, you know, sales might have another way of classifying the way people move through things. But there's nothing on top going, regardless of where they are and which team is responsible, we need to see what their journey is like and understand their journey at that top level. And that's when experience map can be really useful, because you can call it whatever you want down here, but as soon as you start to then go, this is what we're calling it and how it helps our team, but if anyone else wants to use it, this is what it aligns to in the experience map. And that's the point of alignment that you've created. Everything down here is like task-based, like something you need to deliver, and that top layer is your alignment.
That's awesome. I'll just really quickly whiz through the last couple of questions. Tamar said, thanks, Mary. Very insightful presentation. Imagine that you already have got the approvals and alignment from management. How would you productize this journey? Any ideas about the stages that this would take?
I'm sorry. I was reading a chat. Sorry, could you
Tamar was asking about, actually, are you there, Tamar?
I'm here. Yeah, sorry, I cannot switch on the camera. But yeah, basically my question is about like what you mentioned, right? Like connecting content into one platform regarding CX and EX, right? So what would be the ideas that you have to productize this journey, right? Like you're a super top expert in the material, and how would be digitalizing these and creating more automatic content? What would be the stages that you start with, like the low-hanging fruit and then going over? Yeah.
Oh, do you mean like for like content, like structured content and doing
creating like it seems like a lot of manual effort from collecting workshops on getting insights from one system to the other platform and here and there. So the idea would be if you have a product for doing this and help other companies maybe to build their journeys, right? So connecting everything into, I guess it needs to be into one platform for CX and EX. What would be the stages that you would do if you have to develop this product? Thank you.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about doing that connectedness between the content regardless of the platform. So one of the things we would normally do is like any content modeling. I don't know if anyone's done content modeling projects before, but it's really about starting with your user needs, understanding what content matches that needs, where does that content currently live or what the content gap is, and then working out that existing content, is it structured in a way that you can make those connections? Does it have the right metadata? Does it have the ability to add metadata? Does it have tagging? And then we're just really working out what is the current state of play here. And then going, okay, if this is the current state, where do we want to be to? We want to be at a stage where every piece of content, regardless of the platform, has these 5 metadata items, whatever they are. One of them could be stage of the journey, one of them could be verb map, one of them could be customer, whatever they are. And then working out like, how do we now get this into those platforms? Like, how do we get this consistency across all of them, if that's through metadata, if it's a tag, whatever it is. But it's really just looking at what's the current state, where do we want to be, where do we want to get to, and then what's that bridge we need to cross, and then working out what is going to be the best, because you don't want 800 items of metadata, right? So what are going to be the most impactful things that you want to connect them with? And don't give don't give content authors like 50 fields to fill in. It's like top 5 to 10 max. And if that's metadata, or if that's tagging, however the systems do it, you want to have those controlled lists that hopefully like a design lead or a content lead owns, and is the same across all of the platforms. So you're going to have to make a lot of connections and relationships with people who own those platforms, and just show them the value of, if we named this thing this, and then this thing this, we can actually make them talk together in some way, if that's through orchestrating in a personalization thing or an experimentation tool. It's just going to be able to scale and make our content a lot more flexible. I hope I answered your question.
I'm just going to wrap us up actually, because I didn't realize that we were 1 minute away from finishing. But if you're happy to stick around, we can maybe ask another question after. If there's any announcements, just let me pop them in the chat. I will announce it before we go. The next meetup is the 30th of May. Tori Padmajerski, if I pronounced that right, Angus?
I think it's Podmajerski. So
Podmajerski. Yeah.
It's another, we've got two, interesting, we've got two speakers with long, I believe, Polish surnames in a row. So
yeah.
I think it's Podmajerski.
Yeah, Podmajerski. Okay, so Tori Podmajerski is going to be talking about doing content in product. Tori used to work for Google and now has gone off into her own consulting, I think. But she's going to be telling us a little bit about some of the differences between content design within product versus content design in kind of other environments. And yeah, past talks are now on YouTube, so feel free to have a look at the ones that have been popped on there. We, as usual, have our training upcoming. We've got a foundation course on the 6th and 7th of June and the advanced course on the 1st and 2nd of August. So feel free to check them out if you're interested. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Mary, for that fabulous, as always, talk on experience maps. And we can probably just stick around. Are you free for like maybe another 5 minutes to catch any last questions? All right. So if there's anything we missed, we can just go through that now. But if you need to go, feel free to say goodbye and head off.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. There was one question I didn't quite get to. Hopefully she's still here, which was, do you feel like the UX team is the social team of the business after developing this experience map and engagement meeting? I've just realized that's more of a like, were you the center of all of the fun activities that were happening? Yeah.
Was it a question? Or?
I think it was more of a statement, maybe. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Rebecca.
Trying to get through all the messages.
Yeah. Yeah, have a scan through. There's lots of people. Yeah, lots of people saying thank you. No worries, Mary. Thanks, Lynn.